some of you, I don't know all of you, but we do have some information that you would have filled in, and I'm very happy for that. And I know we'll have a mix of persons here. We have some who are new and some who are not so new, some who are very seasoned in the business. So that will be nice. We could learn from each other. I have my colleague with me, Justin Zephyrin. We are both here at the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. My official title is Faculty Development Specialist. Justin is the Blended Learning Support Specialist. So we usually work together on sessions, and in particular when we have the technology type sessions like these, Justin will be here to offer any support. Lisa is not hearing anything. Lisa, did you? Oh dear, I'm sorry. So I will have to put a note in the chat box for Lisa, and Justin may have to try and sort that out. So just so that while I talk, I'm going to just type a note here for Lisa. Excuse my caps lock was on. All right. So and just to give you all a bit of information about the session today. It's part of a two-part workshop. Now, I know that most of you would have already registered for the second part. Just so that you all know, so we're clear, the first part, we're really going to start giving you the kind of foundation, some theoretical principles and some background for you to actually complete designing a course. So after this first session, the intention is not that you will have a complete, a designed course at this point. This is building the foundation. And so when we do the second part, we will close that gap. So by the end of the second part of the workshop, which is next week, you should be able to work on your course outline. So yes, you need to register for part 2. It's not a natural transition. So you need to register for part 2 if you haven't done so already. If you try to register and it says it's full, don't worry, we'll accommodate you once you've been in this session to do the second one. Okay, I'm seeing people joining us now, Kathy and other people. Welcome. Okay, so we're going to start now, and the way I'm going to do the session is not me alone going to be talking for the full hour and a half or 2 hours. The activities that you'll have to engage in because of the nature of what we're trying to do. So I will have to talk for some of it, but I will expect you all to engage in some of the activities. And I know for some of you it might be a little bit new having to do it using Blackboard, but I'm hoping that that too will help in your own course design. So I want to start off by saying this is where we want to go today. So we have a clear idea of the objectives for the session. So I want to start off by giving you the context for program and course design at UWI. Program, and I say program and course design, even though we're doing a course design boot camp, it's usually in, okay, Omar, that I'm thinking you have to teach at 11. So I'm hoping that I'll get through the main set of work by then, so you could go off. I understand that. That's why I broke up the session into 2 parts, and I tried to make it short because I know people have their things to do, and I'm trying my best to see how we could accommodate all of you. So I'm going to describe the context of program and course design. We'll talk a little bit about philosophy and specifically student-centered versus instructor-centered approaches to teaching. We're going to look at what is instructional design, because when we talk about course design, that's really what we're talking about, instructional design. And your role, you're a lecturer, but when you design a course, you're a course developer. When you develop your course, you're a course developer. So that's part of your role. And then we get into the stages in the course design process, and we use a specific model, which is a very generic model that underpins most course design, and look at student analysis, and then you get to writing the learning objectives and starting to draft your course description, which will take us to the start of the second part of the workshop next week. Questions, comments so far? Concerns? Okay, so since you all are so quiet, and I feel as if I'm talking to myself, I have to give you all something to do. And this is what I'll do during the course of the morning if I don't see any questions, comments, hands raised, icons, anything. So if you look at the screen I have there, your name and defining decade, we're going to use some of the tools here in Blackboard. If you look to the top of the whiteboard, you will see an arrow, a finger pointing up, a pencil, a shape, and a T, and an eraser. Now, I want you all to click on the T, and when you click on the T, then click onto the whiteboard. When you click on the whiteboard, you should see a little box, and in that box, I want you to write your name. You can just write your first name, and I want you to identify something that was popular or can be considered a defining moment in a particular decade. And then you need to guess each other's defining decade. So you're not putting the decade, you just put in your name and you're putting something that defines the decade. So I gave you an example there, Diane, and what defined the decade was Pac-Man, Rubik's Cube. So you all could click on the whiteboard, type your name, put in your identifying or defining characteristics, and others will have to try to guess the decade. All right. So you could also try to guess what my decade is that I've put here. So I see Omar Dat. So you put your name. So I need you to put what defines the decade. And then you need to guess. You need to guess other people's decade. So I see VJ put gorillas, not gorillas, but guerrillas. So we need to guess the decade. So I'm going to take a shot at guessing VJ's decade. So VJ, you'll have to let me know in the chat if that's correct. So I put the 1970s. Umadat living on a prayer. I am not going to be the only one guessing the decades, so you'll have to guess the decades. And for some of you, the decades that you put, it's going to tell your age. Lisa left. All right, so I see Keon, Rugrats, Koshina, Never Ending Story, Cheryl, iPhone, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Is that Tynessa or Tanessa? Could you help me?
Tanessa.
Tanessa, thank you. Somebody thinks you're in the wrong decade. Pokemon Go. All right. VJ, am I correct with the gorillas, 70s? All right. I hope that's not giving away your age or mine. Nobody guessed mine. Pac-Man, Rubik's Cube. Come, Justin, you could join in too, you know. Dan is 80s, right? Yes, and that's my age. Yeah. That's my time. That's my decade. Stop laughing, Justin. Okay. Pokemon Go is 2016. Pac-Man was around since the Sega Genesis in the 80s. Yes, oh my God, Pac-Man was around in the 80s. iPhone, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, 2000. Kushina Neverending Story. I remember that, but I can't remember the decade. Was that 80s? Okay, right. Bright neon clothing, Kathy. That feels 80s, Kathy. Yeah, Patrice is 2000s, yeah. Right. Okay, so everybody put something. Who's missing? Let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Who hasn't put yet? Let me see. We have 11 participants. Lisa is coming in now. Good, I'm glad. Lisa, you can hear now? Prince. You need to say the late great Prince. All right, so Lisa is in. Mikhail, right. Mikhail, you're back in. Mikhail, what's your decade? Yes, artist formerly known as. Thank you, Tanessa. Thank you. Mikhail, I don't seen any decade for you. 90s. All right. Okay, so now that we've done that, I mean, it's not just it's an icebreaker, but it wasn't intended to be just an activity for you all to play around with. I wanted to start off by giving you a sense that every period is defined by certain things that happen, certain events, certain developments. And so, even as lecturers, we have to be cognizant of the context that we're operating in. What are the defining moments? What are the characteristics? What are the things that are happening that are popular with the young people that would tend to shape how they respond to what we're doing, and even what things we have access to that will shape our teaching? And so some of you mentioned 2000s and some of the defining things that have emerged, the Facebook, the iPhone, and some of that. So I want us to pause a little bit. There's a video I want to share with you. It's very short. And I want you all to, we look at it at the same time. It's a video looking at 21st century education. It's just 2 minutes, all right? There's no audio in it. I'm going to put the link in the chat box. You should see it there now. Click on it, take the 2 minutes, look at the video, and then we come back in and talk a little bit about it. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to set the timer. So I'll set a timer for 3 minutes just to give you time. Click on it, look at the video for 2 minutes, and then we come back in. So I'm expecting you back in the room in 3 minutes. Timer is going to be set now. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're back. Everybody saw it? Yes, 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 yes. Right. PJ. Good. Give me some immediate thoughts on it. I mean, anything there that y'all don't agree with or anything that's seen. And note that this is a video from 2012. Still relevant. Fast but relevant. Yes, to that stuff. This is a boot camp. Everything's going to be fast. Yes, it is shocking that it's from 2012, but it's still very relevant. Yep, change is inevitable. Right. So I wanted you to understand that that's part of the concept. That's part of the context that we're operating in. Now, on the right side, if you look at the whiteboard, of course, the heading got a little bit skewed when I put it into Blackboard. But if you look at the right side of the whiteboard, one side is this is the 21st century, which is from the video. The other side is the UE guiding philosophy. Now, I sent you all handouts. Keon said he didn't get them, but I think Justin would have sent it to you by now. Kathy asking, how do we as a university in the 21st century facilitate this transition? Right. So that's where I'm going now in terms of the context. So that's the global context. And as a university in the 21st century, we have to also be agile. All right. So if you think of our strategic plan and the idea behind the strategic plan, the AAA, access, agility, alignment, it is with the intention of facilitating this transition to the 21st century. All right. And I'm just going to bring up, in terms of the shared files, that guiding philosophy for you all to have a closer look at it in case you did not what is that? Yeah. In case you did not get the handout or didn't see the handout, I have it there on the whiteboard. Uh, Let me just make it a little bit bigger for you all to see. Right. So we're talking about the 21st century and we say, how do we as a university prepare? You have to set your context. And for us, we're saying that our philosophy is to create, if you look at the handout there, we have the AAA strategy and we want to create the distinctive UE graduate. Remember at the end of that video, they said the 21st century student needs certain skills. When you look at the skills that they were talking about and the skills that we are saying are part of that distinctive UE graduate, they're definitely in alignment. We want the critical creative thinker, we want the effective communicator, we want somebody who's IT skilled and information literate, innovative, if you look at all those different characteristics. And we even have an educational philosophy which is supposed to guide how we do what we do, right? And so we want to create that active, inclusive learning environment. Um, I'm using the pointer here now. Active and inclusive learning environment, a culture of inquiry, equity, and justice, and so on and so on. So you have that handout. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I want to just get some feedback from you all so far. You all, because I'm taking you on this journey. And what I really want to do is for you to see the context within which we're going to be doing the course design. So we're not just doing course design as a theoretical thing that, it's just in a vacuum. This is in the context of what's going on in society with the 21st century and how are we as lecturers at UE St. Augustine going to facilitate that given our needs and our strategy. Comments? Your initial reaction? Cheryl typing. You all could use the microphone too. Just raise your hand. Cheryl, I see you typing. It would be excellent if we had the same goals across all disciplines. Well, you're actually supposed to have the same goal. We are all supposed to have the same goal of developing the distinctive UE graduate. The micro parts of that would then be defined by the faculty that you're in. Yeah, so broadly speaking, Vijay, we are all supposed to be working towards that AAA strategy of access, alignment, and agility, and the development of the distinctive UE graduate. So Cheryl is saying integrating technology to teaching will create a graduate that is IT skilled and information literate. Okay, we could talk a bit about that too. And maybe when you're doing one of Justin's courses, you all could have that discussion in more detail. Right. Somebody wants to say something? I'm hearing an open mic. Okay, so I see people typing. So while all are typing, I'm going to go to, so we're looking at the context for the program, all right? Right. Students are more IT literate than us, yes, and that is something that we have to take into account. And we also have to consider, though, that some of the tools that they use, they don't want to use that for education. So these are the things that we also have to think about. The promoted use of IT and other tools, yes. Now, one of the things we have to look at too is, yes, students are now more IT literate. Yes, the society is going, we do need to be IT literate. But you also have to think about certain basic principles and what you want to achieve beyond just having people use the tools. All right, so we do want to ensure that we have good teaching, good pedagogy, in addition to having students who are IT literate. Okay, so context continued. So we talked about the UE and trying to develop the distinctive UE graduate as one of our generic global activities. And what you're seeing there now on the screen are two templates that we use on the campus. And in fact, these templates are now going to be used across the university. And I know that perhaps some people came to the workshop because there's an awareness that there's a need to be able to fill in this template. Now, the idea of this workshop is not just for you to be able to fill in this template, but I want to let you know that the templates themselves were developed out of the principles of instructional design. So as we go through the principles later on, you will kind of understand a bit more about why there are certain things in the template and why CETL, when you send a course outline to be reviewed, might sometimes send something back. So I just wanted to share the templates as part of the context, because you're operating in a context where these tools are used, but even the tools themselves require you to delve into instructional design and into your broader context for your course design. All right. And so we're going to, so I've just put those up and I send them to you all as handouts. And Vijay, I'll talk about the anti-requisites and so on in the second session, part 2 of the workshop, because we're going to take a closer look at the templates then. So we'll talk about what these things mean in the templates when we get to part 2 of the workshop. All right. So for this one, it's just basic principles. But since these are part of our context, and I know that at the end of it, people would, one of the takeaways you all would want is to be able to fill in, to design your course, fill in your template, and not have too much toing and froing with CETL. So that would be one of the goals at the end for the second part of the workshop. Somebody's microphone is on, and I can't see whose it is yet. So, right. So objective 2. Assess the value of a student-centered versus a instructor-centered approach to teaching. Now, we talked about, I started off by setting the context for course design and course development, right? And I hope everybody's on board with what I've done and why I've done what I've done. Why are we looking at student-centered versus teacher-centered learning? One of the things is, yes, Cheryl, I'm glad you brought that point. The template includes attributes of the ideal UE graduate. Yes. Because that's the generic goal for all of us. So back to this slide that you're seeing here. Why am I talking about student-centered versus teacher-centered? Because a large part of how you do what you do has to do with how you feel about teaching, what you've been exposed to as a teacher, and what you've internalized, and what you want to do and be as a teacher and as a lecturer, all right? And so there's always that issue of, and if you think back to the 21st century video we watched, one of the things now is the nature of the student is changing, as you all recognize. You all are in it every day, even the ones who call yourselves novices. You're in it and you know that from your time to now, there are changes. And students respond differently and students want to be treated differently. And so there's that whole discussion about student-centered versus teacher-centered, and how and should this be a part of my philosophy? What should be my philosophy? So I wanted us to look at another short video. It starts off a little bit dry, but it's a very short. It's about two minutes as well. And I'm going to share that video with you. I want you all to look at it because it raises that issue of student-centered versus instructor-centered teaching. I'm going to put it in chat box just like the last time. Let me just check the timing for it so I know. Okay, I didn't put the timing for it. It should be about, for the most, 4 minutes. So I'll set the timer for 4 minutes, and we'll come back in after you watch it and get some responses again. So let's go off and watch the video. It's very short, don't worry. Yeah, 4 minutes.
Here, take those.
Okay, are you all back? Everybody saw the video? I hope you didn't use the opportunity to run away. All right, good. Keon, Koshina, Patrice, Tanessa, Lisa. Right. Yes, the students have changed because their context have changed. The role of education has changed. Yes. Robert. Good. So we're going to do a little poll since you all looked at the video. Justin's going to put up the poll in a little while. And I want you all to just respond yes or no to the poll question. Yeah. So there's a student-centered teaching part of your teaching philosophy. Yeah. Okay. And so we have 6, 7, 8 yeses, 1 no, 10. Right. And so for those of you, we still have some people who haven't responded. In the poll, click the poll, yes or no. If you're saying yes, I want to get a sense of those of you who have said yes. You could put it in the chat, or you could use the microphone. Indicate anything you do that you feel is student-centered. And for those of you who said no, somebody said TikTok. And for those of you who said no, could you please say why you feel that your philosophy is not that student-centered? And it's not wrong or right or anything, you know. We just want to share here our philosophies. Because your philosophy is your philosophy. So somebody could grab the mic as well. I'm here to hear, you know, just a dead space and me talking. Done time, done. Nobody wants to say. And you're a lecturer, so I know you're not shy. You're using TikTok as an end of class assessment mechanism. Okay. All right. When I start a new topic, I ask the students their opinions first and use their responses to leapfrog into further info. Okay, so I'm getting here that those of you who said student-centered, you're actually trying to engage a student. You're using approaches where you get them involved and, you know, get from them what they're doing. Right, you encourage feedback, discussion, not chalk and talk. More tech in the class. And Lisa, in using the tech, are you using it in the way that other people have been suggesting, where they're trying to get students' opinions, students to be interactive, students to do stuff? Mikhail plays dumb for periods of the class and then let them drive the class forward. Okay, that's a nice way of putting it. All right, so I'm getting the sense here from what y'all are saying that people are trying different things, right? Y'all understand the need to get the students engaged. So you know that in your mind you are trying to focus more on them rather than you being the center of attention, right? Or that you're putting responsibility on them when you start. Robert, you're saying, Robert, that it's not really, the transition hasn't really happened because most of the teaching is still teacher-centered. Students just want to pass exams. Exam is one of the stumbling blocks, right? So, and I'm glad you all raised that thing of exams being a stumbling block, because as we do the course design, one of the things that we look at is how you tie your assessments to your learning outcomes. And when you design your course, even though you know that at the university you're seeing a lot of exams, the onus is on you as a course designer to see how you could reduce that. Because there's no rule that says there has to be 60-40, 50-50. You know, you can make a case for a reduction in final exam and more coursework, an approach where there's more coursework, okay? So yes, I understand what you're saying, Robert, but to a large extent, the ones who develop the courses, and so what you're saying is there's a traditional element that's still there. So those of you who are coming in now, yes, I know they talk about cheating, but there have been course outlines that have been approved with less emphasis on exams, and you have to show how what systems you're putting in place to address some of those concerns. Because I know, I agree that yes, it is a stumbling block, but there are courses where there is 70% coursework, 30% exam, and other kinds of arrangements where cases have been made for more, or even somewhere the nature of the exam is different. So all of that we could talk through in part 2 when we look at assessments. But these are all very, very valid issues that you all are raising, because I know in your context, and we talk about context, these are some of the things that come up. And so yes, and you all are raising all of the issues that we will talk about, more diverse assessments, how you go about adjusting, and all of that, okay? So excellent, and keep these things in mind as we continue the discussion. So now that we all agree, and most of us agree, that there is a need to, even if in your terms of your own philosophy, you're not totally steeped in being student-centered, you do recognize the need for engagement, you do recognize the need for the kinds of assessments that will have students really displaying whether they have achieved your outcomes, all right? So let's start looking at this whole thing of course design and instructional design. Now, instructional design, I know a lot of lecturers don't realize that instructional design is a field of study. You have professional instructional designers. You know, you have people who that's what they do for a living. And so when we talk about course design, it is a very systematic process that's based upon instructional design principles. Now, people who have been fortunate to be teachers in either the primary or secondary school system, and who would have done teacher training, would have been trained to do lesson planning. And that is part of the course design process. As lecturers in a university, it is only recently that there has been the recognition there's a need to actually train people or expose people to lesson planning or how you develop a course. And so I'm gonna, and that's why I call this a boot camp, because this is just a very intense, quick and dirty introduction to instructional design for university lecturers. And I know some of you would have been exposed to it before, either from professional training as lecturers or as teachers. And so this might just be a quick refresher. But for those of you who might be, call yourself the novices, it's going to be new territory. And I'm going to go through fairly quickly because we don't have a lot of time. But there's going to be a recording, and then I'm also available if anybody wants a message or call me to chat or anything like that. All right? So we're going to push through. What is instructional design? And this is just the textbook definition. So just take a look at that definition. I'm not going to read it, although Justin will laugh because I love to read things off the screen. But I'm not going to do it for good practice. It's just basically to say, to reiterate that course design, which is instructional design, is a systematic process. All right? So it's not just something that you wake up one morning and decide. I know that we do that too. You say, oh, I love, if you're in engineering, I love loops and strings. So I'm going to do a course on loops and strings, and I have a textbook, and this is what I did, and so this is what the students must do. I know some people approach course design in that way, traditionally. I'm not saying you do, I'm saying some people do. But course design and instructional design should really be all these things I have on the screen. Goal-oriented, rational, learner-centered, performance-based, and in fact, team-based. And you might say, how can it be team-based if you're a lecturer responsible for a course? Now, I'm going to just kind of type some things quickly in here. Yes, I know you sometimes feel like the Lone Ranger, but in fact, when you do course design, you're really involved with your faculties, well, your departments, your faculties, because what you want to do must be approved. All right, goes through your department, your head of department, goes through faculty board. We have curriculum committees, and then those of you who want to use technology, we have people like Justin, we have people in campus IT. If you want to use the learning management system, My Learning, you want to learn about new technologies to incorporate in the course, all those things, you may want to come to somebody like a Justin or go to campus IT. And so these are all part of the team. Your IT people, your educational technologists, and so on. And so when we look at course design, it is really a complex process, and it's systematic, and it's intended to help you develop a course that can be replicated or can be understood, and that's very clear to the student and to you and to anybody else who may have to teach that course if you're not around. All right, so all of this is why it's such a rational, systematic process. Lisa is saying millennials are in favor of millennials in favor of assignments as group projects, or is it individual projects? Tanessa is saying not senior millennials, Cheryl. And there's an interesting discussion, and I don't want you all to lose it. So we'll continue with it. Hopefully, when we start to talk about assessments, I will remind you all about this discussion. Is there a listing of persons to assist in course development and design? For example, Justin. And Justin is not IT, Justin is more ed technology. And I'm faculty development. And so, yes, I am here to assist in course development and design, and Justin is here as well to assist in course development, and specifically with regard to use of technology. And if you look out for some of their workshops that he runs, that will also help you in terms of some of the tools that can be used. So Cheryl has a yes and a yes. Okay, so I'm saying then that as a lecturer, and yes, I know on the campus it feels like a Lone Ranger. Your role as course designer, what are some of these functions that you perform as course designer? And you're probably wondering why I put the director's chair there. I put the director's chair there because, as I said, I understand that in your context, you could feel like the Lone Ranger. And so like the director, you're managing the process of teaching and learning. You're really doing that. And that would involve stages from conceptualization of the course, all the planning events of that, development of it, implementation of it. And you've been doing that, a lot of you, using intuition, using past experience, using trial and error. And what instructional design is, it provides a framework for that. It maps out, you know, what is this process? And you see, I have here Think ADDIE. Anybody knows what ADDIE is? ADDIE. Any of you met that before? Okay, I see Kathy typing. I'm not going to leave the dead air. Kushina typing. Right. Kushina says analysis, design. Yes, analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation, right. So ADDIE is a model, an instructional design model. It is one of many, but it is one that represents the most generic. It was one of the earliest ones. And so it's a good tool to use as a guide. And in fact, it's one of the tools that is sort of like the foundation of those templates that I showed you earlier, the templates that we use. When you look at the elements in those templates, you'll realize that they're really guided by the ADDIE process, all right? And so in terms of ADDIE, and Kathy very nicely and Kushina both identified the elements of the ADDIE model. ADDIE means analysis, design, develop, implement, evaluate, right? And if you look at it, what the analysis is saying is, you start off, that's the first stage in your course design, program design, any kind of design process. If you think about it, the first stage is analysis, and what that involves is you looking at what are the needs, what are the requirements, who are my target, who are the persons that make up my target, what do they require, and you see why context is so important. That is part of your analysis, all right? When you look at the tool, the template for program proposal, one of the first things they ask about is if you have done a market analysis, if you've looked at market needs. Even in your course design template, it asks you about the rationale for your program and what are the needs you've identified in there. So analysis is the first step that you're going to take, even as a novice course designer, developing one course that is part of a program. You need to do some level of analysis, right? So that's the first stage. The next stage after you do your analysis is writing your learning outcomes. The design, and you'll understand why, because your objectives of whatever you're doing is going to be like the anchor for that whole course or program. Your learning outcomes or learning objectives will be the support for developing your assessments, your teaching strategies, and everything else that comes after. So that's why when you, and I go now to the process of, yes, that is important for them to brief you, because you need to develop, you have homework to do. So they'll have to give you the homework, and perhaps you could listen to the recording, because you'll have homework to do for the second part, and it's critical for you to write clear learning objectives, because that's one of the main things that course outlines get sent back for from CETL. All right, so Tanessa and Patrice, please brief it. See you next week, Omadat, for part 2. Yeah, we'll email it to you. We'll email the recording to you. All right. So A, analysis, D, design, and I'm saying the learning objectives is key. And based on the learning objectives, you then work out your activities, your delivery format, your all a host of other things. Development involves you actually coming up with your materials, your readings, all the handouts, anything that you're going to be using in the course, and even to the extent of doing a little dry run with people, a little group, or even your colleagues, saying, look at this handout, look at these tools, how do you think this will work, what do you think of this? That's the development phase. The implementation phase is, well, when you teach the course, when you offer the course or the program. And then the evaluation is, of course, it's obvious that how did it work? And it's a cycle, as you see. So then you evaluate, how did it work? What do I need to change? What do I need to do differently? What did I do very well? How does this feedback into the loop? And then you look at what you're going to tweak. You might change your assessments, you might change your teaching strategies, and so on. So when a course outline is approved by the university, the basic outline is approved in terms of the learning outcomes that are there, and the weighting and so of your assignments and all that. But it doesn't mean that you cannot change your approaches to what you do when you offer the course the next time based on the evaluation that you get, okay? Because the course outline is it's a frame, and there are parts of it that stand for up to 5 years, but it's expected that you have to be responsive. So there are elements in it that there's an expectation you will adjust based on your evaluation. So I'm going to pause. I've been talking for a while. Questions, comments before we go on to anything else? Everybody clear on the ADDIE process and why I'm introducing you to this? Or should I say anybody unclear on the ADDIE process? Speak now. Timing, analysis, implementation. Say some more, Cheryl. I'm not sure what you're saying here. Or could you use the mic? Can you use your mic? Do you have audio?
Yeah, you're hearing me?
Yeah, very clear.
No, I just was wondering about if, of course it will vary, but what's the average time it would take to actually create that course, starting from analysis to implementation on average?
Okay, now that varies. Yeah? And remember, we're talking course and there's program. A course is one course in a whole program. A program may have 30 courses, depending on what it is. If it's an undergraduate degree program, or if it's a certificate, it may have 4 courses. Or so it depends on. So if you're talking just one course in the program, and you have materials available, you have a clear concept in your mind, that can take you maybe a month to 2 months, depending on what was there before. If it's something from scratch, it's something that you've never done before, you have to you want to make this thing using a lot of technology. It could take 6 months, it could take 3 months. So you see, it's difficult to gauge until you know what the nature of this course is, where does it fit, and that kind of thing. So there's no one estimate of time I could give you without understanding the nature of the course. Any other questions? Are you all there? There's so much silence. All right, and everybody with me so far. See people typing now, so I know you all are there. All right. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a sense of the process for instructional design, and I'm going to have on that too much more because we could always go back if people want to, right? I want to get now to, because we have to be realistic in our context, and we know that when we're developing a course, if it's just a course in a program, so we're in a faculty or in a department, and the faculty is developing a new program, and you have been asked as a member of staff to develop a course in your field, right? One course. And so you now have to look at the needs analysis that was done for that program to understand the context of that course, because your course must sit within some kind of program, except of course if it's like a co-curricular, which Kathy, you might be involved in. If it's a co-curricular course, then it may not necessarily be part of a bigger program, but it's a part of the co-curricular program. So every course sits within a context. So in terms of your analysis stage for doing your course, one of the parts of the analysis you have to do is that contextual analysis where you look at where this course is sitting, all right, and what are the implications of that. You need to look at the context of your faculty in terms of the facilities that are available, because that will define some of the things that you can and cannot do. And then when you get to your student analysis, you may not be able to go off on your own and do a survey of the students, but you need to do some level of analysis to determine the needs, the nature of the students, and so on. So that's why I want to spend a little time on how do you do a quick and dirty student analysis that can feed into your course development. So we talked about, so just to take you back through the process, because I know one or two people joined a little bit late, we started off giving the big picture, the context of program and course development, UE St. Augustine, right? We then went down to looking at course design, the principles of course design, which emerged out of instructional design. And we are using one model, the ADDIE model, analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation, to guide how we're going to do our course design, right? And so now we're looking at, as part of the analysis phase, how we do a quick and dirty student analysis. So we go now to the document that I would have, another handout that I would have sent you, not ready for this slide yet. So I would have sent to you, I'm going to put it up on the screen so that you know, is the student analysis handout. Looks like this, right? So what do you do? How do you get to know your students? What is going to feed into your analysis for your course design? These are things that you have to think about, see if you could get information on. So some things to look at. And you could get this from, think of who are your students before. If you didn't have students before, what kinds of students do you have in your department? Talk to your colleagues, find out, right? So what skills, knowledge, experience, and attitudes do they possess? And a lot of you already said, well, they're coming in very tech savvy. COPEER, that department, COPEER, they do student analysis, generic student analysis for the campus. They have reports there that you could use to get some information in terms of demographics of your students. So that's one thing that you could look at. Talk to some of your students, find out what are some of the conceptions, misconceptions they have about course content. What are their attitudes towards online? What are their attitudes towards group assignments? What are their attitudes towards lectures, work on their own? Because some students think when you give them projects, you're lazy and you just want them to do your work for you. So is this an attitude? Is this a feeling? And you all could look at the handout. So I'm going to pause to get some comments. I was talking away and my microphone was off, okay? So my question was, has anybody done a student analysis? No, Lisa, you haven't done one. Okay. And I'm talking even an informal one, just to gauge. Vanessa laughing at me. It happens, technology, girl. Right. Vijay, you always do it. Vijay, you're a seasoned educator. Vanessa, you think it's done naturally? How is it done naturally? What do you do? That's what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, because I know in your heads, that's what I'm saying. It's an informal thing. So you tell me what you do, Vanessa.
I think in the beginning of a class, most likely you would observe who would be the more mature ones that seem interested, and then you
Right.
have the ones that maybe just want extra credits and may not have
Right.
background. So I think naturally you would be able to distinguish ways in which you could bring across the material, how in depth you could go at the start of the class. And
Right.
with that,
Right. So my question to you then though is, so you in the class, you're teaching a course and you're gauging your students based on that, right? And you all would do that. And then you adjust as you go along. So you might have planned to do something, but you change that plan based on what you got, the students that you got. But now you have to develop an entirely new course. So you don't know who's going to be coming to do that course, right? But you have to try to design the course from the beginning to meet the needs of your potential students. So what I'm suggesting to you is even for, and then as you go along, of course, that's not going to be cast in stone because as you teach a course, you might get different kinds of students. But at the outset, you always have to think about who might my students be? What might they look like? And a lot of you will have a sense of that based on your experience. All right? And so that's what I'm putting out to you. See, Robert says he will usually do informal interviews at the start of the course and try to evaluate their learning. Right. And all of these are good practices that you all are doing. Um, very good practices. And you need to use that data that you get. You need to see your hand up. Oh, yeah. And you
what
need, yes, go ahead.
what about needs of like stakeholders? So for example, if
Yes.
have a practicum and you may not want to push the student in a particular way, but if the needs of the institution, the persons that facilitating the students are different,
Mm-hmm.
how do you incorporate that?
You just trailed off. You just trailed off.
Should we as a department like include stakeholder analysis within as well as the student analysis? Like do some sort of job.
Yes, yes, right. And in fact, why I didn't focus on the stakeholder analysis here is because the stakeholder analysis will usually be done at the level of the program development when you're developing and designing the program. And so you would expect that when you're doing your course design, you could look at whatever needs assessment was done that's available for you to draw on as you do your course. Because your course is part of a program. And the program, whoever is designing the program, should have done their broader needs assessment that would include the stakeholder analysis. Right? In the absence of that, then yes, you have to do your own stake. So if you're doing a standalone course, then you would have to do the broader analysis. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move on because I'm looking at the time and I want to get to um, the objectives part now. So we've done this. We looked at the idea of the student analysis, and as I said, I'm taking you through the stages here. So the next step now, I want to just share this. Oh gosh, and it got a bit skewed here. But what I want to, from this diagram, what I want to show you is using the model. The analysis part is the student needs and context. All right. So your whole context, the needs analysis, all of that forms part of the A. Then the next phase would be your broad aims, which would come out of that needs assessment. And then you drill down now to your learning outcomes. And at the top, the one that's skewed that you're not seeing, thanks Justin, is assessment, strategies, and content. So once you have your aims, learning objectives, and outcomes, you can then move to that next phase where you have assessment strategies, assessments, you work out your assessments, you work out your teaching strategies, you work out your content, all right? So we're moving quickly now to writing learning objectives. And I know all of you would have written learning objectives because you're teaching, right? But one of the things we've seen is that the objectives are not written in a way that's SMART, that are measurable, that would help you in developing your assessments and so on. So one of the key things I want to do today is to help you understand what a good learning objective or learning outcome should look like. All right. What you're seeing on the screen are just some formal descriptions of what a learning objective is. And it's an intended outcome of instruction. And it has to be stated or should be stated in terms, I'm just going to underline, of specific and observable students' performance. All right. It has to be very specific. And again, as in the whole instructional design process, there are principles for doing this. Right? So I'm just going to take you through that quickly. So the learning objective, and I use objectives and outcomes interchangeably. Now, learning outcomes are those statements that describe what the student should be able to do at the end of a course or training intervention or anything like that. All right. So how do you develop? How do you write it? And basically, you start off by asking yourself, what is it I want my students to be able to do to demonstrate that they have learned? That's a basic thing, right? And you have a very simple approach and a little more complex approach. I'll give you the simple approach first. So to write a learning outcome, you simply say, after completing this course or after completing this session, the student should be able to. And so the who, the learning outcome with this approach has three parts. The who, which is the student, an action verb, which defines what the student should be able to do, and then a content reference. So the example on the right says, the student should be able to identify, which is your verb, your action verb. You want the student to be able to identify ways to control food and cost quality. The controlling of the food cost and quality represents your content. That's what you're going to be dealing with in the session or the workshop or whatever it is that you're doing. And at the end of it, you want the student to be able to identify the ways to control. So already you could see, if you had to measure or assess whether the student achieved the objective, you would have to do some kind of assessment that would allow the student to identify these different ways that they could control food costs and quality. And that's a very basic learning outcome structure, a very basic approach. A little more complex approach is called the ABCD approach. Right? It's saying that a learning outcome must have these parts that you're seeing there. The audience, right? The audience, which is the learner. So you start off, the student, by the end of the session, the student, who's the audience, will be able to, the next part of the outcome will be the behavior. What is it the student will be able to do? What you want them to be able to perform. And for that you use a relevant verb. A verb that is very clear, that is almost measurable. I use the term measurable guardedly, right? It's saying that another part of the outcome should be the specific condition under which the learning will occur, right? So what are the conditions you want this, under which you want this learning to occur? What will they use? What are the constraints and so on? So that's the condition. And then the degree, which is the minimum acceptable standard. Do you want them to do this in a particular time frame? Do you want them to do this in a paragraph? In a, you know, what is the degree to which you want them to achieve that that behavior that you have identified, right? So this is called the ABCD structure. The other one, if I go back, which says you just have to have the verb and the content reference. Now, I'm going to give you an idea of what the tool that you can use to come up with the verb that will be more specific. But I just want to share first some of the verbs that you don't use. Because, and why? Because they're vague. I know a lot of people like to say, by the end of this, the students will know how to do X, Y, Z. Know is so broad, you know. Know could encompass, how will you know that they know? They have to do something to show that they know. So know, understand, learn, be familiar with, be taught. All of those are no-nos. All of those are, you know, things that that you try to avoid. Okay, I'm going to pause. Anybody want to stop me so far? Because you all are going to practice in a little bit. I just want to get through the principles and then you do your practice. Okay, so I'm assuming everybody's on board because I'm not seeing any questions. All right, good. Okay, so, right, thank you. So I know you're not sleeping, good. Yes, I know you've seen a lot of course outlines with know and understand, but that's very vague and it's not the practice. So, and I'll show you how do you avoid using know and understand. So now Benjamin Bloom, and if you say that name in some places, people will, oh God, no. But Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy is one taxonomy that you can use to help you come up with your learning outcomes. There are others, but Bloom is one of the most popular and it's relatively easy to use. Okay, so Benjamin Bloom came up with this taxonomy of learning domains. What Bloom is saying is you have the cognitive area, the affective, and the psychomotor. The cognitive has to do with knowledge. And if you look at the slide there, you see under knowledge, there are the instances where you want people to either recall information, understand information, apply information, analyze, synthesize, or evaluate, right? In the affective domain, where you're trying to address attitudes, you want students to either be aware of things, to react to things, to, you know, you're looking at a value system, you want them to internalize. And then with psychomotor, that's the more hands-on. You may want people to manipulate something, articulate, use their hands to do something. So that's Bloom saying that we have all these domains of learning. And within these domains of learning, these are some of the stages or the areas that you want to address in learning. So in the cognitive domain, which is where a lot of us tend to focus, and I'm using that one, but I'll give you a list with all the other domains. Bloom is saying that if you look at, and you see on the left and the right, the left is old Bloom, and the right is a newer version of Bloom's taxonomy, where Bloom is saying when you're designing a course, you don't really want to only address, in most cases, unless it's a very basic course, you don't only want to be in the area of having students remember. You want students to move from remembering to understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. So you're moving up in terms of the taxonomy, right? And so I go back now to what we were saying about what a learning outcome should look like. So we're saying in a learning outcome, what you're going to try to do is get a verb that fits within one of these areas where you are trying to get the students to be. So if it is that you just want them to remember something, what is the verb that you'll use? If you want them to understand, what are the verbs that you'll use? So I sent everybody a handout. Let me just go to that one, and I'll pull it up now. Right? Effective use of learning objectives is the handout. Everybody should have this handout. Right? Oh, and I'm seeing it's only one page. Tell me if your handout only has one page. This is one of 6. All right, okay. Right, your handout should have 6 pages. And just let me know if you have this handout. Yes? Good. Right. Now, I want you to take some time now and just, if you haven't looked at it before, browse through the handout. And you will see this one has Bloom as well as Fink's taxonomy, right? And what it's doing is it's providing you with, if you look at the tables you're seeing, the dimension of learning and some of the verbs that you could use. So for instance, if your objective is for the student to be able to understand something or remember something. Yes, so if you want students to, the question is asking about ethical issues, then that's not really the cognitive domain. You are looking at more the affective domain, Kushina. And in Fink's one, you could look at the human dimension, right? Look at Fink, page 2, human dimension. Let me see if I get the pencil here. Ethics, character building. These are some of the verbs that you use here. Serve as role model, settle, suggest, suspend judgment, take responsibility, promote, protect, reconcile, right? So take some time. I'll give you all a minute to just browse this quickly. Right? Okay, so I'm going to give you all a quick activity. Justin is going to put you all into groups to do it, and we're going to try to mix the groups as far as is possible. So let me just give you the activity. I thought my microphone was off again, sorry. So the activity is for you all. I'm going to put up, now that I've taken you through that, I'm going to put up 2 very basic objectives, right? And what I want you all to do is to review those objectives, see, in your groups, talk about looking at if they satisfy the requirements for good objectives, and revise them. Okay, so each group is it's the same 2 objectives you will have. Review and revise it, and when we come back into the larger room, we'll talk about what you all found. So you're going to use the tools I gave you. You have the list with the verbs. So you're going to look at the structure of the objectives and see if they meet the structure of the objectives, and see if you can revise those objectives, even though you may not be in the field, because that's what we have to do at CETL. We may not be in the field of study, but we have to work with people to revise the objectives, all right? So I'm going to give you the 2 objectives now. Those are the objectives, and Justin is going to put you all into the rooms. And so for that activity, you have, how much time we're going to give for that, Justin? We're going to give you all 5 minutes for that. So we'll bring you all back into the big group after 5 minutes, okay? Oh, mine changed too.